When the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here's your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and Cassie Cruz.
all you gotta do is sing a song.
Hi, everybody. I am Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Cassie Cruz.
Welcome to our podcast. We are excited to be on YouTube and Instagram TV, and it's a whole new world for us.
Yes, because we really thank you during this COVID-19 unprecedented time for all of us, this crisis. We wish we could easily forget this crisis. And there is some people that do forget that, and that's the people that have Alzheimer's. So, we're here to talk to the caregivers who are dealing with people that will not have that memory of that, but you have to deal with so much. You've been in a crisis for so long, and we're supporting you. That's why we're doing this podcast. We believe that with love that we can actually come together and that make sure that nobody's left alone and feeling like they only have to do it alone, and that there's not a stigma on this particular disease. That's why we wanted to bring awareness and talking about awareness.
Yeah.
We have the awesomest guest today. Susan DeMarois is the California Government Affairs Director for the Alzheimer's Association. In 2013, Susan DeMarois has directed the state government affairs for the National Alzheimer's Association. In California, the association is organized under 2 regions with 21 local offices serving individuals and families statewide. As a registered lobbyist in Sacramento, Susan advocates for legislative, budget, and regulatory changes at the state capitol on behalf of the 2.3 million Californians directly impacted by Alzheimer's. It's an incredible amount, and at the state level, the Alzheimer's Association has secured key legislative victories in dementia training, physician education, and Alzheimer's research, raising more than $26 million to date. She resides in Sacramento. We're super happy to have her. She's a family person and she has her own family that's had the experience with dementia. Let's bring Susan on, please.
Susan, could you do it? Could you try harder to do something? Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. God, it's like, it blows my mind how much you do. It's just incredible. But seriously.
All those government acronyms sound really impressive.
They do.
Well, can I tell you?
A lot of words.
I want to say this though, because we can laugh that off, but it is super impressive. And you've really rolled your sleeves up and got into the government fray to change policies, to get funds that are badly needed for the research and the education of our physicians. So they can really help the people that have Alzheimer's and mostly their families and the caregivers, so they can understand how to support that.
Totally.
That's what's not well known right now, even still to this day. And how many decades has this been on your forefront?
You are so right about that. We're still, even though it's a disease that affects older people, it's still a relatively new disease. National research on Alzheimer's didn't really start until the 1980s. Even the Alzheimer's Association, we weren't formed until the 1980s. So it's still relatively new and not well understood, whether that's by physicians or families. A lot of people still think Alzheimer's is just normal aging and it's to be expected, and that's not the case. It's a fatal disease that has signs and symptoms and can be accurately diagnosed, and there are treatment plans, just like other chronic conditions.
Right. Yeah. No, it's astounding. We're having another guest who's wrote a book about it when her grandma had this disease in 1961, and the way it was viewed at that time, it was that way for a very long time, where it was considered senility and just brushed aside because is part of the aging process, like you said. But, and although it does happen mostly to people who are of a certain age group, it's still, we're living longer. So if you get Alzheimer's in your 60s and 70s, that's devastating at this, in this day and age, because that's chapter 3 for a lot of us. That's like we're reinventing and doing another thing, and nobody wants to just curl up in a ball, and and nobody, and our memories are our gifts. Those are our treasured gifts.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
So
true.
we have a lot of work to do, and you're helping us do it with your podcast. So thank you for everything you're doing to connect people and to raise awareness, especially with physicians, because many physicians trained before this was even well known. And most physicians don't learn about geriatrics and the aging process. It's a very small part of medical school. So we know there will be a lot more older people. That's where the demographics are headed in our nation. So this is important for everyone, what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and even our, our first responders and all, people are everyone needs to know about it so that we know how to deal with it.
And that it looks different on every person. It's not the same and there's so many different variations they're discovering with the education and the research, right? So many different types and how they look. And just like they're like snowflakes, just like people, right? I want to ask you, Susan, who are you and how did you get motivated to be in this field?
I think I came at this from sort of a social justice. I like a good fight and an underdog. And so I started out being, civically engaged and politically engaged and worked for Congress and the state assembly. And then I moved into healthcare and health policy. And I quickly realized that older adults don't get the attention or resources that they need. And I started working in a more direct service way. I worked with retirement communities around the state, and I worked on a ballot initiative around end-of-life care. And I realized, that there were just the services and supports didn't exist to allow people to have the choices that they have at other stages of their life. That families, many families are only able to do, they either have to keep someone in the home because they have no options outside of the home, or conversely, some people, the only option they have is placement in a long-term care facility because there are no supports at home or in the community. And I've been working my whole career to try to shore up those supports and that network so people they can really make the right choice for the individual and for their family by having more options for care and support. And the Alzheimer's Association, that's our mission. So it's a perfect fit.
Tell us a little bit of your story, like what made you be so passionate about this area? What drew you to this?
How were you introduced to it? Yeah.
And early on when I started with the association, I took pride that I was professional and objective because I hadn't been touched by Alzheimer's. And I thought it made me a really good lobbyist because I was able to focus on the facts and the data. And like both of you and so many other people, my mom developed Alzheimer's disease. And talk about a humbling experience. I realized how much I didn't know. And I also discovered how even being steeped in these issues for years, I didn't know anything. And our family was no better off than any other family when we had to navigate the system. And so with my mom's experience, she lived in rural Northern California. There were not a lot of options where she lived. Her physician was 78 years old and kept saying there wasn't anything going on. And she loved her doctor, but we knew differently. And then, the story that sticks with me is it would have been 5 years ago this month. We moved our daughter into her college dorm room. She was starting her freshman year. in the same week that we moved our mom into a nursing home. And those two rooms looked almost identical. They were both probably built in the 1960s. They had the same cabinetry. And I thought, the whole world is tilting in favor of my daughter. We're so well prepared for this, for college. We had orientation. We had, her whole high school career prepared her to succeed. And then with my mom, I have a sister that's a college professor. I have one that's an attorney. I work in this field, and we didn't know.
You're
what to do.
blindsided. You were blindsided.
Blindsided. And, since then I've just thought that is not right. That's not right. That people have to figure it out for themselves. One family after another has to go through this same difficult learning cycle. There's got to be a better way.
Wow. So how long were you working in the organization before that happened to you personally? Because you had this objective idea, you were which I love your ideals, because you were going to go advocate, you were going to make a shift and a change, because you had already had a passion to do that in this field, right? That was just something that you naturally had when you went to college, and then you got out and you wanted to get in this field and you started working in the government. How long before your mom got diagnosed and then you got floored?
Yeah, I had probably been working with the association for about 10 years.
Wow, 10 years.
And I'd been to Congress and, dozens of times on Alzheimer's issues. I testified at the California State Capitol hundreds of times, and it really just stopped me in my tracks. And like you said about the snowflake, I also realized, everyone's experience is so different, and it makes it really hard to understand this disease, and it makes it hard to advocate, because a lot of people think it's one, they lose their memory, that's it. And it's so much more complex, and it's over such a long period of time. It's very hard to tell this story in a soundbite, because it's
a journey.
It varies by person, and it's never the same twice.
And yet there are similarities, right? And so there's these generalities that are on a spectrum, and right, and then and then you have to realize that everyone is an individual, and so how it presents is quite different, and yet the same. And so we have to learn how to manage that and figure out the best way for us to still live our lives and enjoy our lives, and for them, are the people that we're caring for, to enjoy their lives as for what it is, the new normal.
Well, because we're still alive, and we love living. Human beings, we love life.
Well, yeah, it always blows my mind. It blows my mind when I first started getting accustomed to going to the assisted livings and seeing, it was a whole new world to me. And I would look around and I go, it's extraordinary, the will to live. People that are, you know what I mean? Like, what is that makes people go, like if you were told that you're going to be ending up in a place like that, feeling the way you do, 10 years ago, like my mom used to say, Susie, not me, don't, right? And then you realize, like I say to her now, Mommy, how you doing? Great, I'm alive, and it's how quickly things can change, but it is the will to live. And I think, life is a good choice.
I want to ask you something, Susan. So basically, if you, after 10 years of being part of the organization and advocating and seeing the forefront and seeing all those people and helping all those people and all these services that you've been able to bring forth, right, and support, if you got floored, right, when it happened to your family and you felt ill prepared, does that spur you on so nobody else has to feel that way? Is that part of that? Because it's daunting, it's overloading. First off, that it's happening, you want to deny it, right? There's all these stages. No, it's not happening. No, it's this, just like you went through, Susie, no, you don't have it. I'm going to fix this. we're going to fix it. And And then having to deal with all of those pieces, because these are all the human emotions, because there is a grief, there is a loss that's happening, but it's also
Never ending.
you're living with it.
Mhm.
And learning how to live with it. And that's the reason why we wanted to have this podcast, so we could talk to the people to learn how to live with it, with love, loving each other, finding resources, finding each other, connecting. What's your advice if you had such a hard time with it? Has it gotten, because this was about 5 years ago, you said?
Mhm.
So if you got hit with that, I bet your trajectory has changed slightly since then, has it?
It has. And, you're making me think of a few things. When I first started with the association, I had almost zero contact with individuals who actually had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It was uncommon in the early years to have people self-advocate, and now a big part of our advocacy involves people who have been diagnosed and who are saying, I am living with Alzheimer's, this is what it looks like, and who are talking firsthand, giving their firsthand story. And they're all ages. There's younger onset, but there are also people in their 70s and 80s. And that has been so powerful, because with almost every other condition, that's the perspective that you typically get. A cancer survivor or somebody who had a heart attack who then talks about it. They don't have somebody else explaining what's going on for them. So that's been very powerful. And then, something that I knew through my work, but I saw with my family, and it's especially true of older generations, they're very reliant on their medical doctor, a physician.
Yes.
And for the questions about Alzheimer's usually aren't medical. They're more of the social and psychological. And so people don't get, it's not a fault of physicians, but they don't get, if you've ever had children, tomorrow's Mother's Day, I have
Yes.
2 children. We had the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting and What to Expect the First Year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It wasn't written by doctors. It was written by
Mothers.
mothers
Yeah.
who just said, these are the things that happen to us and they might happen to you.
It's my Bible.
That's what the real need is with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And physicians can't explain that. And so, something that the Alzheimer's Association offers is we have peer-to-peer support groups, and people learn so much in those settings. They say, I have a hard time giving my mom a shower. And then the other people in the support group, all caregivers, say, well, here's what I tried. Have you done this? This worked for me. You might look at this. And we need more of that peer-to-peer support. And the first step is really talking about it, coming out of denial and sharing what's going on personally or with your family, so that other people can share with you their experience. And that's how we're going to learn. I think we're going to go a lot further that way than we are with a pamphlet in the doctor's office.
100%. 100%.
Well, that's what you're advocating for too, is all the education to the physicians, getting that funding so you're able to do that. That's part of that mantra for you, correct?
Exactly. And something, physicians don't have a lot of time. And that's not their fault. It's the way our health system is these days. And I think when they meet with someone with Alzheimer's, they think, oh, there are going to be a lot of questions and I don't have the answers. What we've done in some places is the doctor writes a prescription, call the Alzheimer's Association. And they give our 800 number that's available 24/7. And then the physician is doing something, and then the family has some place to go and to start. Just something as simple as that. This is all we do all day, every day, is Alzheimer's and dementia at the Alzheimer's Association. So we can help a physician. They don't have to know everything and answer all the questions and spend all the time. That's what we're there for. So we need to work in partnership.
Absolutely.
We need to work in partnership with each other too, right? And really connect, because a lot of people, with the stigma, or they don't want to, no, it's not that. or it's something else, or they're just getting old, or no big deal. And then it escalates, and then they're caught off guard, right?
Yeah.
Either they didn't prepare enough or speak to the person that's perhaps on that early opportunity that's happening to get like, what are your care instructions? What do you want? How can I serve you when you're not able to speak for yourself anymore?
But also,
Mhm.
it's very nuanced, because somebody who doesn't have Alzheimer's may have one directive, and then when they are stricken with that, you as a caregiver, you walk a fine line with respecting what their previous,
Wishes were?
yeah, because
Because they might change.
my mom wanted me to hang her, I mean, I'm just saying, right? It's like she didn't want to be in one of those places. And then she, there was a very distinct shift when I became mommy, and I had to do what was best for her, and it's,
Mhm.
and you have, you there's choices that, you have to make that are harder choices than you.
They're not easy. They're not easy. What you thought is not like checkbox or anything like
Yeah.
that. That's what you're talking about, though, Susan. You have a resource at Alzheimer's Association to call. You can call anonymously. If
Right.
you don't have to say who you are, you can still get information. You can still connect. You can still make sure that you have some feedback, sounding board. Maybe you feel like you're going crazy. You're not. And that you get to be also cared for, when you're caring for
Mhm.
somebody else, right? Isn't that really what's going on?
Absolutely. And you mentioned, Cassie, that, COVID, that we're in this environment, and we're very proud that we have I'll say it for your listeners. It's 1-800-272-3900. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all 50 states, we have master's level clinicians who are available by phone. During COVID, when people can't leave their house, thank goodness we have this professional helpline. And we get people, people have told us, their routines have changed. They're home now during the day when they weren't previously. We know with Alzheimer's, a lot of people confuse day and night. And so if something's happening at 2 or 3 in the morning and you don't know what's going on, I've heard someone say, her husband would start moving the furniture around in the living room in the middle of the night. So she could call this number, 24/7, and somebody would say, they would ask the questions, and sometimes it's just saying, this must be really hard for you right now. Just having a live person that isn't shocked, and like you said, it's anonymous. It's not your small town where you're trying, you don't want everyone to know your business. It's somebody who is trained in this.
Right.
And can help you and can give you advice that will be meaningful and be able to touch you. It's like, and also sometimes like the advice is super simple too. And then you don't think about that.
Yeah,
it's like,
know.
Right, because you don't know, because you're like, oh, I want to get that person to stop. Hey, I'm going to try to get you to stop that. It's like, or just, hey, let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to probably lose interest. And also trying to find that humor in those crisis times, because if we don't find that, or if we don't share that with them, hey, take a breath for a second. Hey, slow down. That's probably, I would imagine those are some of the things that are being shared, because we get so, that builds our anxiety. Like, if you're on the war front, the soldiers, their whole thing is breathe in 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and do that 4 times. That brings your anxiety level down, and those are things that we don't get trained as people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these are ways for us to, share. What areas do you serve in that you're directly involved with?
So I'm here in Sacramento, California today. It's about 95 degrees outside. And the association.
Hey, that's hopefully killing the COVID, man.
I know. I hope that's true.
Hope so. I hope that's true, man. Die.
The Alzheimer's Association is in all 50 states. Here in California, we've got 21 offices, so we're in all parts, from the Mexico border up to the Oregon border. my job in public policy and advocacy, I actually work in 4 states: Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. It's really common now for people to be providing care at a distance, especially in COVID, but
Yeah.
our families have changed. Everybody doesn't live in the same town anymore. And so our services can help, if an adult daughter lives in Los Angeles and her mom is in Atlanta, Georgia, she can connect to services in that area too. And so that's part of being, one of the strengths of being part of a nationwide network is wherever you call, we can connect you with somebody on the ground in the community.
Right. Can they help you with elder laws and things like that with guidance? Because I had an issue that I needed to deal with, and it really took, it was probably the hardest time I had with my mom, was trying to get all her finances and, straightened out, and I had to go to court, and there was so much. It was such a runaround, and I eventually didn't have standing and wasted so much time and money, and it's just a mess. It's just a mess, and that's something that just adds to the stress of the whole thing. People take advantage of people that don't have their cognitive abilities anymore.
Yes.
And so my mom was signed over to a living trust that I know she wouldn't have wanted, and so her money was being managed by somebody else, and I didn't have standing even as her conservator person.
Wow.
So I mean, those are things that because people are living longer because of a disease like Alzheimer's, they can sign something. They can go, oh, I need to sign this. Great, let me sign
Yeah.
it. Sure,
Of course, they don't have any memory and they don't know, but they have a bank account.
exactly. And so then you got to
and
go.
people
Go on.
You got to protect. No, I mean, you hope that people don't try to take advantage of the vulnerable, but people do.
I mean, it's the
because
ugly side. It's an ugly side
the
of
ugly
our,
side.
and we
Yes.
need to. But it is something I just thought I would bring up to you because it's something that I feel strongly about, because I tried so hard to advocate for her, and I was literally like, it.
You just felt like by yourself.
It
Yeah,
but emotionally, and I'm strong, but it was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm at a loss because I'm the only one advocating for her. And guess what? She's a human being. We're not talking about something like, we're not talking about
property.
a ticket or a traffic ticket or a car. This is a human being whose rest of her life is in jeopardy. Help me. No, and there really is very little help in that area. There are some organizations that say they can help you, but they're limited.
Oh, Susie, I feel for you, and it happens to the best of people. So don't beat yourself up. I mean, there are a couple things going on here. One, because so few people, many people are in denial and they don't get a diagnosis until they're pretty advanced in the disease process.
Mm-hmm.
In which case decision making is impaired, or sometimes it's not even possible.
Right.
Also, a lot of people don't ever get a diagnosis. So there, about half of people are never diagnosed. The physician will just say, oh, looks like dementia, put it in the chart, and that's the end of the story. So if that's the case, no one can assist them because there's nothing in the medical record that shows that they can't make decisions for themselves.
Right.
And
that's
we're
so
working,
important, Susan. You're right. It needs to be documented.
Yeah, and we're big, so we do something called care consultations, and during COVID we can do them by phone, and it includes the legal planning and financial planning. And we're big proponent, one of the reasons the Alzheimer's Association is so, we're all about early detection and early diagnosis, and this is probably the single biggest reason is to do the advanced care planning, to put your finances and your healthcare directive and get everything in order so that you can be 100% in control and in charge of your affairs while you're able to. And if people are advanced in the disease, they're not able to. And a lot of abuse happens by family members and friends, a lot. The person.
Oh yeah, I'll be honest. I'll be very, transparent. My brother and I had this was the whole thing, and my brother created this whole mess, and it was so ugly. And I just realized I needed to I had one person to take care of besides my children, and that was my mom. And I needed whatever it took. And I didn't want to be a fiduciary. That wasn't my goal. I would have rather hired a fiduciary. He was not the right fiduciary. So that was the problem. And so, and it's really difficult to legally change that once it's done.
Yes.
Yes, especially since they move in that once they move into that realm of the dementia or the Alzheimer's, because then they're not their full capacity anymore.
Right. And the law isn't set up. The law is not set up. It says it is, and it pretends to be, but it's not set up to protect.
Is that one of the things that you're advocating for, though, Susan?
It is. In fact, we're working right now with Congress on an elder abuse bill, and it includes many of these things we're talking about here. And we've done a lot of work with financial, banks and financial institutions, because often that they're the first ones to pick up on something that's not right.
Right.
And they can be really helpful. And to do advanced care planning. And that's sadly, early in the podcast, you said silver linings. One of the silver linings of COVID is it has got people talking openly about their wishes and putting their financial and healthcare directives in order. People of all ages are starting to have those conversations out of fear that, they might contract COVID and have to, go to the hospital and possibly be alone. So wanting to get, and that's a good thing for all of us. Most people of all ages don't have that paperwork in order.
We don't want to look at it. We don't want to think of it. And also, even if they do, like my mom had a will because she was married to my stepfather for many years, and they had their separate wills because of separate children, right? And my brother wanted her to change it into a living trust, which
living trust, which is
no, it can be.
It can be very good to have a living trust.
Good, but not if you don't put both children in as the trust.
Well, that's true. You need to make sure if it's 50-50, depending on what
right. And so it became so complicated, and exactly what my mother didn't want. And in her lucid moments, I would say to her, I'd say, Mom, I want to do this, but I don't have control of your money. Who does? And I would say to her, why? I would never have done that. She would say that in her lucid moments. And I'd go, Mom, it is what it is. We'll deal with it.
Right.
We will do what we have to do if we, which eventually just cut the losses and said, whatever he's going to do is fine. I will make sure she's as good as she could be. And thank God for the Jewish home for taking her after all gone.
Thank God for them. No. And that's a rough place to be, Susie. And you know what? You're not the only one that has had that happen, right? No. Because family members, you think family, and you think they're going to support and care and love, and you wish that would be true. I want that to be true, but that's not always true, because that's how domestic violence, I'm not trying to bring in another thing, but the domestic violence is huge. And those are people that supposedly love you.
Right.
And with that love, it's a stranglehold or whatever. And that's what you're talking about with the elder abuse and all that stuff.
But again, it comes down to education, Susan, because it's educating even our legal system to understand the realm of what can happen. It's like, well, did she sign that? Yes, she signed it, but was she under duress? No, she wasn't under duress. She didn't understand. If your son comes in and says, "Oh, Mom, you need to sign this," she's going to believe. She's going to go.
She's not going to go, "Oh, what's that for?" No.
Right.
Right. That's how you get elder abuse.
Exactly. And so there are, it's very nuanced, and so it becomes a special. It needs to be a specialty area.
That's something that we hope, as our population ages and this demographic swells, it's already underway.
Yes.
We have a lot of those protections in place for children and people who specialize in that. And we don't have, we hope that more people will choose to work in gerontology and geriatrics and financial, attorneys will specialize in this, financial planners, that more people will, there will be more specialized expertise and technical experts to help people. Because I think, previously it was, oh, you just prepared kind of generically for when you're older, and you're taken
Exactly.
care of.
Exactly.
And
And by the way, just so I can just throw this out there, not to be on my agenda the entire time, but this is one of the reasons, but it's true. There, at least when I was dealing with my mom, and this is about 5 years ago, there I was I was sent to a few people who were elder experts, right, in law. That was their specialty, but they really didn't really. And I was taken advantage of financially, where I was, and I came with my heart on my sleeve, just saying, please,
Sure.
I've been run around, I'm exhausted. Like, can you please guide me? Whatever, just give me the good guidance that I need so I can do the best for her. And there's a lot of room for people that don't have your best interest at heart, and so we have to watch out for that.
We have to be careful. We have to be
Mhm.
very careful, and really to
You're vulnerable. You need help.
Of
You're
course.
vulnerable.
of course, and also you're reaching out because you're looking for a lifeline, and when they say
100%. I mean,
expert,
I can't
that's a
take.
lifeline, and you want to hold on to them.
I had notebooks this big of like my mom's whole case. Like, I ended up having to
sorry.
go into the courtroom myself because I couldn't.
Oh, trust anybody.
People were like oh my God, the lawyers take advantage of you, and it's really terrible.
So could you explain all the services and all the support that you're providing? Because it's a plethora.
it is, and there are a lot of needs. That's the
Daunting,
story.
right?
And then the stages and the progression of the disease, the needs change. So it's not that people can just have one connection with us and then, it evolves over time. So, if someone were newly diagnosed, we would provide them with resources about, what to expect, the stages of the disease. We would let them know we have support groups. We have support groups for the individual with Alzheimer's. We have support groups for the caregiver. We have educational sessions about, everything about healthy living, diet, exercise, and nutrition, about communication, behaviors, finance, legal. So we have education. We have education for caregivers, and the biggest disservice we can do to the community is to say Alzheimer's is normal aging, and to have a caregiver think they're doing something wrong because it should be easier, or everyone says it's just normal, but it doesn't feel normal to me. So caregivers need a lot of education and training and support. We do research updates. People are, really want to hear about the latest research, what's going on. We do the care consultations that help you do a roadmap for your care.
Lovely.
In the home, what you might need in the community, like adult daycare or home care,
Wow.
some enrichment and socialization, and then looking ahead to placement and, what's the difference between assisted living and a nursing home? What do they cost? How do you find the right place? What are the questions you should be asking? We do education on hospitalizations, discharge planning. So even, people with Alzheimer's have other conditions too that take them to the hospital for other reasons, or it might be related to the Alzheimer's. And then how do you handle a hospitalization and a discharge? We do education on end-of-life care, palliative care, hospice. And then we have a lot to engage, advocacy. A lot of people really want to use their voice. They say, when they get into this disease and they say, what, this is all that exists, or this is the best, that is available for my mom, or this is, they want to use their voice in advocacy. We also have the Walk to End Alzheimer's. It's a great community event that brings people together so that they can feel a part of a larger movement and that they're not alone. And we raise money for research through the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So those are the core services that we offer everywhere. And then some local offices might.
That's a lot. That's great. That's fantastic. Your fantastic organization that just gives. and please, everybody, if you have that opportunity, please give to them so they can give back to us. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a nonprofit organization, but it needs funding as well. And that's why you're doing the Walk to End Alzheimer's, right? And we want to help fundraise in any way that we can. And it's, that's the way that Susie and I know that we are able to give back. Wow. That's so important. So important.
I mean, this is our sweat equity. We're not asking for, we're not going to, this is just something we're doing because we want to, it has to be done, and it needs to be done, and it needs conversation. Even like everything you're saying resonates with me, Susan. And, on a personal level, I've been through probably every aspect of this, and it's like, even with, like you said, being admitted into hospital and being, that kind of situation, when you have someone with Alzheimer's, it can be really daunting.
It's scary.
But just on another issue, my mom, the story, Cassie, with my mom, who was going in for a regular appointment through her assisted living, took her into her doctor's appointment, and she was getting agitated because she had just moved into this new place. So she was not adjusting yet well. They mistook her for being crazy and put her in the 72-hour lockup because they thought she was crazy. And they basically, that was the last time she walked, because they put her in a tethered chair and gave her Depakote.
That's actually, I think, why you, Susan, really went in to advocate at Congress. Can you tell us the stories of what kind of bills and funds that you're advocating in Congress, and what do you see on the horizon, really? I mean, do you see a cure coming? Do you see enough funds from the government to support us in this crisis? Really, I know we're in the COVID-19 crisis, but this has been a crisis for a very long time.
Yeah, it reminds me of AIDS. It reminds me of AIDS in a way that it's like, you think we're never gonna find anything for it. We just interviewed this amazing journalist from Scientific American, and talking about the whole amyloid hypothesis, and we've been on that forever, and are we in the right direction? And it's like, it's just it's like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, but Susan's going to tell us.
Yes,
tell,
Susan.
She's going to tell us.
I want to sign Susie up as an advocate, because
she's it.
Your stories, legislators and lawmakers need to hear how things really work. But the issues
let me just interject.
Okay,
I would
great.
use.
Okay.
I would be happy to. I don't know if you got a link to my movie, but Valerie Harper plays my mother in it, and it's her last performance, and it's uplifting and happy, but it really shows both sides, and I want to share the story because I think it's important. It does. It's important, and your stories are what make people.
Our story all of our stories are important.
All of them.
Every single one, exactly. And I think what Susan's saying is, like, when you're able to put a face to the story and present yourself in Congress in some way, or have that being that advocate, they're seeing a human being. It is no longer on paper. It is no longer a pamphlet that's being handed out, right? You're seeing a real person with the real issues. And then they get to say, oh, that I see how that didn't really work well, right? Oh, that law didn't protect her. Because they're making laws, and they're putting bills into law to protect or to create something new, right? And that's what I wanted to
But
ask.
also, it's the protocol, Susan, like of a doctor, which you were saying, like doctors aren't trained for Alzheimer's. So it's like anything, if that's not their niche, but it overlaps, they're a doctor, but it overlaps into their health, but it doesn't really cover Alzheimer's. So they can only do what they were trained to do. And it's of no fault of theirs, because right. So, but that's on us to know that, or at least, be
aware of it,
that they're only going to tell us so much, because that's all they can do.
Well, because that's all they know. But
exactly.
But I think that's why we wanted to know, like, what do you see on the horizon, Susan? Is there, can you talk about the bills and the funds?
Sure.
Hopefully that you're shaking out of the government.
So on the federal level, our number one priority is increasing funding for Alzheimer's research. We are the only disease in the top 10 causes of death where there's no cause, no prevention, and no treatment,
right.
Where the cause is not known. And we know we don't have a cure. So we've been really successful collectively as a nation, bipartisan, both parties, under the Obama administration, under the Trump administration, to increase Alzheimer's funding at the National Institutes of Health. Just about 6 or so years ago, it was at $400 million a year, and now it's up to $2.8 billion a year.
Wow.
So we've been going, and still the funding for Alzheimer's research pales compared to cancer and heart disease, and we're not besmirching either of those,
Right.
but it takes continuous investment to build up enough ideas, to build up a stable of researchers. For many years, researchers didn't choose this path because there was no money in it.
Right.
So now we're attracting young investigators, people who are saying, I want to study Alzheimer's, whether
Because
they're a
it's worth
neurologist.
their time. It's
Yes,
yes.
and they're starting to see, the NIH director says, I've heard him speak publicly, and he says we need more shots on goal. And we used to have just one play, and now you look at research around the country, and they're looking at it, including also research funded by the Alzheimer's Association. We're looking at a lot of different pathways. We're looking at prevention and risk reduction and lifestyle, and we're looking at the more traditional routes. And that's how we're going to be successful in a treatment or a cure. So research is our number one priority. And we have an ask this year, $354 million that we're holding firm. Even with COVID, we cannot afford as a nation to pull back on Alzheimer's research. And we also do a lot around Medicare, around care planning for Medicare, elder abuse. We have a bill with elder abuse. And we've been working really hard in recent years to get public health, the Centers for Disease Control, to treat Alzheimer's in the same way they treat other chronic conditions, AIDS, heart disease, diabetes, cancer. For decades, they've had a public health, a chronic disease management method for other conditions that they don't have for Alzheimer's. So we do a lot in the public health space.
What does that look like when you say that? When they have something in place, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So public health has its own approach. We're seeing it play out with COVID because it's a public health crisis. But, it starts with community engagement. It starts with early intervention. It starts with community education, public awareness. So a lot of we've reduced smoking because of interventions at the community level, with changes in behavior, with public awareness, campaigns around smoking or vaping or sexually transmitted diseases. We need that same approach to be applied for Alzheimer's, where it makes people want to come forward and say, you know what, something's not right, doctor, can you test me? And we've done that with public health with other conditions, where we encourage people, especially with cancers, where we've encouraged screening, early screening, or we've tied it to somebody's age, saying at 50 you should have a colonoscopy. Well, maybe at 65 you should have a memory test, and it should just get embedded in our system, and in the way it has with other
without stigma, without affecting your livelihood, so that it doesn't it doesn't shoot you in the foot.
Well, it doesn't define you. It doesn't have to define you, but it can be discussed. It can be talked about. And
also on a social level, like it also helps just acclimate the other generations to understand it, and to not make it look so scary. Like children don't understand the aging process, and they're shielded from it, and it's scary, and they're not around it enough. And
we need to prepare.
And they love it. I mean, the children that are acclimated to older people love the older people.
Of course, because we're all one type of, we're human beings, and we're social creatures, and we need to have all the generations around us. That's what makes us richer, I think. and gives us that stability. And, the elderly used to watch the young, right, in other nations. And, while the parents went to work and brought back, and then they came back, but that has been lost a little bit. So with all that, that's really speaking to your point, right, Susie? Just
Cassie, you're so right about preparedness is a word that right now Alzheimer's is very much a crisis response, and we're not doing what either individually or as communities or as a state or nation to prepare. And in California, where I live and work, Governor Gavin Newsom formed an Alzheimer's prevention and preparedness task force when he took office. And
it's so great. I love him. I do. And I'm just hats off to you, buddy, because this has been a rough patch. But you know what, though, he's doing his best to have us be prepared. So can you speak on that? What you're doing with him and that?
Yeah, right out of the gate when he took office, his father passed away right before he took office, and his father had dementia, and his family took care of him. And the governor will say, that even a family that was connected and had resources and there were multiple siblings, they were, it was more than they could manage. And he committed to plan for a state that's aging and a state where we have the largest number of people with Alzheimer's in the nation, 690,000 in California.
Wow.
And he tapped former First Lady Maria Shriver to head the task force. She has a family experience with Alzheimer's too. So the two of them are working with this, hotshot task force of researchers and family members and innovators. Dan Buettner, who wrote the book, The Blue Zones, is on it. They're looking from every angle at, how can we plan our communities differently? How can we focus research on women and people of color that have been neglected and overlooked in research forever with Alzheimer's?
Why do women have more Alzheimer's than men?
Yeah, why? So I'm part of that task force. It's wonderful work. It continues during COVID. We've been meeting virtually, and we expect to have a report at the end of this year to put California on a path forward.
Oh, wow. I would love to be a part of that. That's so important.
Amazing.
So amazing and so forward thinking and necessary.
Necessary. Thank you so much for being on that task force and sharing what you're doing with that. Can I ask you, because we started talking about your story, we started discussing your mom about 5 years ago, she was diagnosed. What's going on now? What has happened in the last 5 years? What have you discovered?
So,
if I may ask you such.
Of course, we're all, before I answer that, I'm working on a fundraiser. We have something called The Longest Day, and I'm working with an artist friend to do these t-shirts that say, every Alzheimer's statistic is an untold love story. And that's why I love the name of your podcast, because, every story is a love story, whether it's a love story between a husband and wife or a parent and child or siblings or so my mom passed away 2.5 years ago. She lived in a nursing home for about a year. She had a really difficult end of life that was very hard to witness. In part for some of the reasons we've talked about. She had remarried, and we didn't have any say in healthcare decisions, and it was a love story. She remarried her childhood sweetheart, and he felt that they didn't have enough years together, and he just wanted her. He didn't want to let her go, and consequently she had just some really invasive and difficult hospital issues in her final. And I was happy to join this podcast on a Saturday. Tomorrow's Mother's Day. My mom's birthday is May 20th. So this month I'm thinking a lot about my mom. A lot about her.
I feel for you so much. I mean, it hits home. I understand. And
well, I'm absolutely moved. I just want to say that bring tears to my eyes and my heart. And I want to dedicate this podcast to your mother.
Well, her name, see how
Yes.
credit-
Yes.
her name was Hope.
Oh, it's my daughter's middle name, Hope. Joey
I
Hope.
love it. I love it. So
That for someone who, today she would be in her 80s, that was a very uncommon name for her generation. And it
Yeah.
really, that's what we're all about. All of us are, through our podcast and through your work, we're all bringing hope to people that don't have it yet. And it
you
will come.
you have definitely brought hope to us, because your mom, Hope, gave birth to you, and because she did, and also raised you to be such a great human being that you are. Her story lives on. Hope lives on. And we're getting to dedicate this podcast to Hope today, and also, of course, for all the mommies in the world
That's
that
right.
raise their daughters or sons to be good human beings, to do the right thing, to stand up for people that are vulnerable, and to make a shift and a change in an area that is daunting and has not been addressed and has not been heard and has not been made aware of.
Because this is what Alzheimer's looks like right here. This is
right.
it, and
This is it. And there's joy. There's tremendous pain. There's tremendous pain, and it's a gut wrenching, sock you in the gut sometimes, and you're on the floor with all those emotions, and all those are accurate. But there's also joy, and there's life, and there's love. And if we can love during that time and find those pieces, then we can survive and we can persevere. And that's what your mom, Hope, I'm sure, instilled in you, because I can just see it. And her story lives on because of you, Susan.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Is there
I can't wait to watch your films. I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, we'll
to
send
watch
you
your
links to
films.
mine is a short, but and Cassie's is the full length. But we met on the festival circuit. We were both, had, because we had the Alzheimer's films, right? And we both had celebrities in our films, and we kept meeting each other in the same, program.
Sure.
And I go,
And then we started fundraising together. We started, being advocates, and it's like,
we both became the faces for Alzheimer's Los Angeles, and we were on the light posts all over LA, and it was like, and we were. I know both of us feel so proud to have been, at least, to make some difference.
I'm so grateful for your story today, Susan. I'm so grateful for the things that you're sharing with us, and the things that you're doing with Congress to change, getting the funding, getting the education that's needed, getting the word out, creating that awareness, and all the services that the Alzheimer's Association provides nationwide for free of cost to anybody that's in need. And there's a plethora of services and all those options, so you do not have to be alone.
No.
And you can feel very alone, but you don't have to do it alone, and we don't suggest you do it alone.
The first walk I did was one of the walks, and I remember, because I know Bryan Cranston very well. We go way back. He actually was at a project of mine, and he was there speaking on his mom before his mom had passed away. Do you remember? It was in Century City, and it was my first time. My daughters and my best friend and their friends, and we all had T-shirts with my mom's picture on it, and it was like, a memory is a hard thing to lose, something. And so it was like we felt the community there, and I didn't even know a thing about it. So you were my foray into having some semblance of an extended family.
Well, we're grateful that you built a community for people like us to go to, and for really anybody to go to that will need support. Susan, is there something that we didn't cover that you would like to make sure that you share? And also, I want to ask you two other things. Do you have any advice for the caregivers that are at home during the COVID-19, and also for when they're caring for their families that are in facilities?
So the only thing I realized I didn't give our website address, which is very simple for anyone who wants resources, tips to find services in your area, wherever you live, or to participate in the walk. It's alz.org. alz.org. And then in this COVID environment, that's part of, what I said earlier is the Alzheimer's story doesn't fit neatly in a paragraph. So we have people who are living at home right now in COVID. We have family caregivers that can't visit their loved one, or they can't leave. Situations have been changed. It's not business as usual for families. So, the simple advice we give is try, people with Alzheimer's and dementia, respond best to structure and routine. And so keeping things as simple as possible, trying your best to have a routine and a schedule, which is hard when, you're used to going someplace every Tuesday and Thursday, and that's not happening, and there's no church on the weekend. Things that are the typical mile markers aren't there.
Yeah.
And just trying to keep things simple. This is a complicated time. Try not to have the news on too much. It can be distressing for someone with Alzheimer's. They can pick up on that something's going on. Things like masks can be off-putting and scary. So just doing the best and making sure the caregiver gets a break. And that's really the hardest part now, because there's no relief or respite for caregivers. So even if it's sitting on the balcony for 10 minutes, or listening to some music, or trying reading a magazine, taking what you can to take a break, to keep your cup full as a caregiver.
Put on a streaming Zumba class, something that you can move, do some
Yes.
exercise, get your endorphins
Yes.
going.
And even do it with the person that has Alzheimer's too. Like, hey, let's do this together and see. If
Music is a great tool. We talked about it. We did a little special of our own on the COVID, and because I'm a big advocate for music.
Yes.
My mom is a
Yes.
singer, and music is magic, and it opens up doors, and it diffuses, and it's just a lovely tool. And so put it on, move, dance, sing.
Yeah,
Paint.
and it's free. Yes, music, and finding things on TV too, whether it's old movies or images. A lot of places online, museums and zoos that are doing the online.
Yes.
They're open now, so that's something too that people can tap into. We
That's
have
a
all
great
of our
idea.
all of our education and support groups are now available online. So if people go to alz.org, they can tap into, we're actually seeing people that never came to an education class because they couldn't drive or they couldn't leave. And now they're able to, to participate in some of our education or a support group. And then for Susie, if your mom is in assisted living, or if you have a loved one in a nursing home, it is hard on everybody right now to not be able to visit. And it's great that there's technology, but that doesn't work for everyone in either direction. Sometimes the person who wants to communicate isn't comfortable with technology, can't access technology, doesn't have broadband.
Right.
Or if your mom has never had an iPad in front of her, this is probably not the time to start communicating. But we've seen providers and facilities just really step up and do everything they can to help loved ones communicate.
Yeah.
And
ask, and don't you say to ask, right? Because I asked, and sure enough, the Jewish Home was providing appointments to do Zoom or Skype or whatever, and I was telling Cassie, the first time all I could see were the hairs up my mom's nose because she didn't know where to look, right? But, we have a standing date on Wednesday. Good. And we have a new baby. My daughter has a baby. So we have 4 generations. Nice. And so she's 6 months and I've got my mom, we got 4 generations, the opposite ends of the spectrum, and both learning how to look at this thing and relate. And it's, I watch them both getting adjusted to it. It's beautiful.
And we're tactile, so missing that physical contact is a big deal. And I'm sure for the people that have Alzheimer's, that's how we reach them a lot. You reach them by touching them, or just anybody really, So trying to get used to this virtual connection, it's better than not having any, though, because I'm sure they feel very left. I'm sure they feel very left, and they don't know why. And they might not have that memory, of that opportunity.
True.
Is there?
And here's one thing I can add too, to the governor's credit, Governor Newsom in California, where I live, they just changed their policy for hospitals. Originally, you couldn't have anyone accompany you for safety reasons, but in the cases of people with, moderate to severe Alzheimer's or dementia, who can't express themselves or articulate what's going on, and who can't, upon discharge, can't explain what happened. They are making exceptions now in hospitals to allow one care partner to join somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. And, I just want to thank the state of California for being flexible and understanding. That's an example where they've said, we understand this is not ordinary. This condition needs special accommodations, and they've made that change.
That's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Fight for that when they really do need somebody there with them.
They have to, because they can't, they don't know for themselves, and they don't even know where they are sometimes, and they don't know what just happened, and then they're not going to remember a minute later. So I'm so glad that you're on that task force, Susan. I am so glad that we had this opportunity to meet. Lee is such a great connector. She's wonderful. So we are absolutely blessed that you were able to join us. I'm just in awe. I'm super grateful.
I'm going to see both of you again. I know now that I know you, I'm going to be thinking of ways that we can work together and partner again.
We'd love that. We're at your beck and call.
Yeah, we're here for you.
Likewise, if there's anything that I can do or the Alzheimer's Association can do, thank you for having a podcast on this topic. I love the title of your podcast.
Thank you.
The content, the variety of people that you get on, it's wonderful.
We had Lisa Gibbons, who was the first person that ever told me what to do with my mom. I mean, my doctor said, I have a friend, her name is Lisa Gibbons. I'll bet she'll, this was like 14 years ago. My mom was not even diagnosed yet. Lisa took me under her wing, and she said, she was so lovely. And she said, videotape, because things will go, time goes by, and then you realize you missed that, and you want to remember them. And so I did. I listened to her, and we've been friends ever since. And she's such a great lady.
She's lovely. She's very lovely. And we're so grateful for, of course, her, and we're grateful for you, Susan, coming on and sharing all the great stuff that you're doing. And I'm going to ask one last question. Do you think we're going to see in our lifetime a cure? What's your gut?
I smile because the first time the governor's task force with Maria Shriver met, that was the question. They did this exercise where everybody had to stand up, and it said, if you think that you'll find a cure in your lifetime, go to this side of the room. If you think we won't, go to that side. And they did exercises like that. And when you think of a straight up cure where nobody develops the disease and it's banished from the face of the earth, I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. But I am so confident and optimistic that in my lifetime, we will be able to delay the onset of the disease, and we will be able to treat it effectively so that it will not look, I know in my lifetime, it will not look the same as it does today, where we will have people who have really high functioning for long periods of time that we've not seen ever before. I absolutely believe that's going to happen. Absolutely.
That's great. That's good to hear from
you. And California, I think it might come out of California. Our research community here in
it sure sounds like
it is amazing.
Yay. Well, we love California, and
We do. We're Californians, so of course we do. We love California, and we're innovative, and we have a lot of talent here, and we have a lot of researchers, and we've got you and Governor Newsom on a task force, Maria Shriver, making a change, making a shift, and making it important. And
I mean, Maria's HBO special was also like, that was groundbreaking. I remember watching that going, that was the first time I really got a good view of what was going to happen. Like she's been my muse forever. I just,
she's
such
remarkable woman.
Well,
I look forward to meeting her one day.
Ask her to be on your podcast.
I would love to. I have no idea how to get out. It's so funny, I've run into so many people like being in the industry, but she's one I haven't. I'd love to.
How to help us make that happen, Susan? We'd love to have her. Will you help us with that? Did you hear me?
Help you. Yes. We'll connect you. We're all about the connections.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I know, because we are. I mean, I know she will love the movies that we've done and the people that, and the care. And I think that, because I have watched every Alzheimer's film, and that's why I decided to do this, because not one of them in my mind, well, I take that back. One, I thought Away From Her was very good, but most of them give you a very false perspective of what it is really about. And it's either very bleak or very glib. And so I wanted to give a real look at it. So I think I would be,
It's everything, actually. It's all those. It's that, and it's also joy, and it's wonderfulness, and it's those moments like my Gram. I mean, she's hilarious. She'd be like all, trying to, and I'm like, what are you trying to do, Gram? And she's like, I'm trying to change the channel. I'm like, well, that's your cell phone, honey. So, just let me find the remote for you. Just beautiful, fun, those moments, and the moments that I'll always cherish. Those are the moments that we have. And those are the moments, Susan, that you have with your mom as well, right? Those moments, that joy thing. And we are so very grateful as we wrap up another wonderful episode. And
Susan, thank you. Alzheimer's Association, alz.org. But all the information will be in the show notes, like always. So
yes. So all the links will be there, so you can reach Susan. You'll have the 800 number there. You'll have the link to their website. You'll be able to contact them. So go to anything that you need on our podcast. We'll have it all sitting there for you, so it'll be available. And we want to say how grateful we are for you. We thank you for coming on. And we, of course, always thank all of you for listening. We really appreciate you subscribing and supporting us in this adventure. And Susie, of course, I always thank you. And please remember, love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all.
Didn't she do that great? Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.